Welcome to this week's episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Grab a seat at the table as Masters rowing coaches Marlene Royal and Rebecca Caro share their biggest secrets on how to unleash your hidden potential and plot a new course for real results on the water and off. Now, on to the show.
Well, hello everybody, and a very happy new rowing year to everyone who's listening live. I've had a lovely break, and of course, I'm now ready to come back and launch into 2024 with enthusiasm. I'm Rebecca Caro, and today on the podcast, we're going to be talking compromises in rowing. What are the things that happen to you, and what can you do about them? Firstly, I want to kick into what's in the training program for January. Our usual training program for our monthly subscribers is based around people understanding what to train for. And so our base program, we have 3 available for people who have slightly different goals. So for people in the Southern Hemisphere, they're going to be doing the 1K base prep. So people who are going to be racing 1K events in April, May, June. And that's particularly Australians, New Zealanders. People in the Northern Hemisphere who are going to be doing long distance races in March, a 2K or 5K peak. That's the 8's head of the river, the veteran 8's head of the river. Any spring races in the USA, they're going to be doing the 2 to 5K March peak. And those who are doing indoor rowing, there's a separate training program for the Crash Bees and for other indoor rowing events that are happening in February and March. That is the reason why the topic today is about compromises, because the Crash Bees is a really big event, which most of you will have heard of. And in past years, it's been held in March. And so we wrote a program for people ready to race an erg race in March. And then the race date got announced right at the back end of December, and it's in February. It's February the 4th. Last year, it was March the 5th. Suddenly, that's 4 weeks of training that you can't do because they aren't there. And as a consequence, in our program this month, there are actually 2 Crash Bees programs. One for people who are going to be doing a February date race, and one for people who are going to do a March date race. And I'm going to come back to that later and how we made compromises in order to accommodate that. Now, those of you who know the detail of how we run our programs, we also have land training, which aligns with those different on-water or erg training peaks, just so that you know each training session is substitutable. You can either do it on the water or on the erg. In our technique module, there's a video about using erg force curves, how to interpret them, what they mean. In our performance module, there's an article about how to review your past year and plan ahead for the upcoming year. Our rowing lifestyle is about monitoring your sleep and how to find out what's happening when you're not conscious. And our bonus is a fantastic video of people sculling right over left, which, as most of you know, is not how most of us train. So if you're interested in the programs, go to fastermastersrowing.com/join. And if you are on our newsletter list, there's a special discount coupon for the annual program that was sent out earlier this week. If you sign up to the annual program this week, I'm offering a bonus of a one-on-one with me, which you can book. I will get in touch with you and telling you how to do it so that we can run through any questions you've got, a little bit about your personal rowing journey, and any insight from my expertise, which may be useful for you. Now let's talk about compromises and this actual situation that occurred when the Crash Bee date got announced. Naturally, my first thought was panic. How am I going to get athletes who've been training for 2 months suddenly fitter 4 weeks early? And it led to a really interesting discussion with the other coaches in Faster Masters Rowing, because there's nothing you can do about it. And as you know, in any rowing endeavor, you've got to look at what are the things that I can influence, I can affect and make a change to, and what are the things that I have no ability to change at all. And obviously this fits into the latter. The first thing that we looked at was to review our planned series of monthly workouts and look at what's the end goal. So we went to the final month of training that we have prepared, which includes a taper week so that you get rested before the race. And then using a calendar, we worked back to figure out when that taper week needs to start, because the Crash Bees is now on February the 4th. Then we went and had a look at all of the key fixed points that are part of the program. So we have tests, 2K tests, and we had one in December. We had another one. We had one on the 26th of December, just to make absolutely certain the day after Christmas you were ready to do a 2K. And then we had another one planned for the 13th of January. Obviously, that's still to come. And we started to think, is that still appropriate, given that the race date is now February the 4th? And there was a discussion around that. What about the people who are racing in March? Well, actually for them, it didn't need to change. And then we took a look at the individual workouts we had planned, particularly paying attention to those of higher intensity, those that were closer to race distance, those were closer to race ratings. And we compared what we were planning on doing in January with what we would have chosen to do during February. And that's where we ended up rewriting the program for people who are doing the Crash Bees so that they are prepared. The compromise is fundamentally the base level fitness. There is now not enough time to build another 4 weeks of base level and intermediate level training in, because we need to accelerate the higher ratings, the race distance, the higher intensities. And it's basically one of those situations where you go, this is absolutely not ideal, but we're going to have to shrug our shoulders, take it on the chin and get on with it, and then work out what to do about it and to make the best we can of the current situation. Now, what about other compromises that come about in your rowing as a coach, maybe as an athlete? One of the most obvious ones is athlete availability. Particularly us masters, we have a lot on in our lives. We have a lot of responsibilities, family responsibilities, work responsibilities, children, sometimes aging parents. And that means that people's availability can vary massively and can change very, very quickly. Someone's parent falls ill, they are not going to be rowing. They're going to be off there looking after their sick parent. So what are the things that you can do to enable your medium-term goal? Perhaps you're training for a regatta, perhaps you just have a regular crew that you like to go out with. What can you do to keep the continuity going while obviously supporting your colleague while they're off doing the other things that they do? One thing I find is that in order to put an 8 on the water, you need to have at least 12 people on the roster. It's just the way of the world for masters. People can't always make it, even though you say we always train on a Tuesday and a Saturday. Sometimes these things aren't possible. So you need to have a large number of people. And for me, my preference in our club is to use those extra people to upskill people who are new to 8, new to sweep, new to the group, so that they begin to acquire some of the learnings. And we've worked out that basically, if you can get 6 people consistently in an 8, you can slot in 2 more without too much disruption. Give those people a really great outing, help them to enjoy it, help them to become a little more skillful, maybe a little fitter, and basically build your next crew. So the next 8 is going to then be built around the people who are learning the skills, learning how to move an 8, learning how to train hard with the slightly more experienced people. And that makes for really good club continuity, because what it means is people are used to jumping in and out of crews with people they don't normally row with, and they become adaptable. And then when it comes to regattas and you need to have a different lineup, it really isn't a big stress because everyone's rowing to the same pattern. The other thing, of course, is weather-based compromises. We all know this week I was supposed to be teaching a single sculls course, and I laughingly told my group, it's always flat calm. It is not always flat calm in the second week in January. And we ended up on day one with really quite choppy water conditions, which is not ideal for people's very first outing in a single. But we had to deal with it. So we dealt with it by trying to find a piece of water that was in a wind shadow shelter so that we could row there. But equally, you and I know that there are reasons that throw you off the water. In the UK at the moment, a lot of rivers are red boarded because they've had a lot of rain and it's not safe. So what about switching your workout to a cross-training session? Basically, if you train on an erg and train on the water, you can pretty much 100% just substitute it. In general, on the erg, you probably need to be 2 points lower than the planned workout on the water, particularly at mid to high rates. So something from 24 above. If it's a 24 workout on the erg, on the water, you need to be about 22 on the erg. And definitely when you get to the higher rates, because of the loading being somewhat different because it's a fixed head machine. Secondly, what if you substitute running? What if you substitute a bike ride? You want an equivalent workout in terms of the stress on your body and the physiology. So a 1 hour erg or a 1 hour steady state workout on the water is equivalent to a 45-minute run, because you're carrying your own body weight, so you will work harder running. By contrast, if you choose cycling, it's an hour and a half cycling. So it's going to be 90 minutes cycling, equivalent to 60 minutes rowing, equivalent to 45 minutes running. So that's a nice rule of thumb, so that you know you're getting the same physiological benefit. You're doing the workout. You might be the one who's gone to the sick parent, so you can still do a workout around your other responsibilities. There was a lovely story I heard of a mum whose children were into gym or swimming. And what she used to do was drop them off at their activity, keep her erg in the boot of the car, get it out and row in the car park to do her own workout while the children were doing their activity. Great solution. And it meant she got her training done with the minimum amount of fuss. Then looking at race days. Race days are often situations where compromises are called for. Someone goes injured at the last minute. Who is your planned substitute, or as the Americans say, alternate rower? Who have you got who can slot in? If you particularly have a series of crews, so you might, when we used to do the 8's head of the river in London, you'd have a first 8, a second 8, maybe a third 8. You need to make it clear to all the athletes what will happen if someone goes ill or injured, and who will move up from the next crew in order to take their place. Or are there people, and masters are brilliant at this, who can be brought in, drafted at the last minute just to slot in? So we had a couple of wonderful masters who would agree to slot into one of the youth 8s if someone was unavailable, even though they hadn't done much training with that particular team. So all of those things are the sorts of compromises that you need to be alert to the fact that they may happen. If they don't happen, great. But if they do, you don't want them to put you off your stride. Now thinking about your race preparation. When you come close to racing, there are certain things that take time to learn. And if you get a shortened training period, maybe due to weather, maybe due to a change in race date, as I was talking about earlier, there are things that are worth focusing on and things that are too hard to do. So in a reasonably short period, maybe 2 weeks, a coach can train a crew to have a faster catch, definitely. And to do that in the context of the workouts that have already been planned. By contrast, in a 2-week period, you won't get much fitness gain. You will get some, but you won't have enough time to do lots of long endurance work if you're planning to do a race, because you need the ratings to be higher. So that's the sort of trade-off that you need to be considering if there is a situation where your training gets concentrated into a shorter period of time. So what can you do that can change in a short period of time, and what do you just have to abandon? You might just say, I would really love this athlete to make this technical change, but recognizing that the cohesiveness of the crew and their mental and emotional preparation for racing is more important. I'm going to set that aside. They're unlikely to make that change and be able to hold it in their consistent rowing in a 2-week period. Therefore, I will just live with it. And we'll come back to that when we're under less pressure and the focus can be on individual things rather than crew cohesiveness, which is maybe what you want as you roll in towards a big race and regatta. What are the compromises that you have faced in your rowing? I'm sure there are things that you know about that I haven't touched on today. So I'd love to hear a bit more about them. Do put them down as notes underneath the live stream, or hit an email and send it in to us at Faster Masters Rowing. Have a fantastic week, and I very much look forward to seeing you again this time next week.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your rowing friends about the show. And if you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.